Okay, the next item of business is the statement by Neil Gray on improving care on the Isle of Skye. The Cabinet Secretary will take questions on the issues from his statement afterwards, so there should be no interruptions or interventions. And I call on the Cabinet Secretary up to 10 minutes, please.
Thank you, President Officer. As part of my summer tour, I travelled to Skye and visited Broadford and Portree hospitals, as well as Home Farm Care Home. I went to hear directly from the public in Skye, to hear about the challenges in providing urgent care services and to see how we can work together to address them. I was proud to meet with dedicated staff, including nurses, advanced nurse practitioners, doctors and paramedics, with local community groups and with the co-chairs of the Sir Lewis Ritchie's steering group, alongside the Deputy First Minister in her constituency capacity. Let me provide some important context, Presiding Officer. In February 2018, Sir Lewis Ritchie, a respected academic GP, was asked by the Chair of NHS Highland to carry out a review of urgent care services in Skye, Lachalsh and South West Ross. That review came after a period of serious staffing challenges, most acutely in Portree, which led to a breakdown in resilient out-of-hours care provision. It recommended essential improvements for sustainable 24/7 urgent care and inpatient services at Portree Hospital, in tandem with these services provided at Broadford Hospital. The review also emphasised the excellent care provided to the public by clinical, social and support care staff. During his expert group's review, Sir Lewis talked to and listened to many voices, including the public, who receive the services, and the staff working tirelessly to deliver them. My own recent visit to Broadford and Portree was also about listening and learning. The people of Skye spoke out because they feared the loss of vital health services that they depend upon. I'm clear that recent incidences in the media about difficulties accessing services are not acceptable, and I understand why the people of Skye have felt frustrated. I would like to take this opportunity to pay tribute to the dedication and commitment of the community representative groups in Skye, who made sure that their voices were heard on these important issues. Throughout 2018, Sir Lewis met with local communities in Skye and also in Lachalsh and South West Ross, and also their representatives, and he engaged with the leadership team at NHS Highland. From there, independent facilitators were appointed to drive forward a range of recommended changes, and I'm pleased to say that the real positive progress has taken shape. Importantly, every single one of Sir Lewis's recommendations was accepted by NHS Highland. However, as we well know, the journey from there has not been without setbacks. The arrival of the COVID-19 pandemic brought with it severe operational challenges. Progress stalled and in some areas was even reversed as staff left their posts and NHS Highland struggled to recruit those needed to deliver a safe and sustainable service. This, regrettably, led to a further breakdown in trust between NHS Highland and the communities of Skye. But let me be clear, Presiding Officer, during my recent visit and through continued engagement with the Board, I have been assured that NHS Highland is fully committed to rebuilding that relationship. NHS Highland will work hand in hand with the people of Skye to deliver a service that is safe, suitable and sustainable. I want to say today that I welcome that commitment and will ensure that the Scottish Government provides its full support to NHS Highland to take this forward. Presiding Officer, Portree Hospital provides inpatient, outpatient and urgent care facilities and is a base for the Scottish Ambulance Service. The hospital currently has capacity for 12 inpatient beds. However, utilisation of these beds can vary depending on patient need and the availability of staff. Portree Hospital is utilising up to 8 beds, whilst the Board completes recruitment to all established vacancies. Agency staff are supporting the inpatient service in the short term until this is achieved. In relation to the future of the hospital, NHS Highland have been clear since the initial report that Portree Hospital will remain open with a range of key services. I am also clear that the local community's voice must be central in any decisions taken, and that this will be done through Sir Lewis Ritchie's implementation steering group. This has been the vehicle for many members of the community to voice concerns, communicate directly and work collaboratively with the Board on important issues for a number of years now. As a result of the implementation of Sir Lewis's recommendations, significant improvements have been made to urgent care services in Skye. Urgent care at Portree Hospital is provided 24/7 by an integrated team of clinical staff. This includes registered nursing staff, advanced practitioners and paramedics. They can all assess patients and can respond to a range of minor injuries. You may recall the tragic incident that took place at the Skye Music Festival in May 2024, where one person sadly lost their life and at the same time another person was unable to access urgent care support from clinical staff at Portree Hospital. Many important lessons were learned by NHS Highland following this event, and a new service model was implemented in August of that year, which enabled access to 24/7 urgent care at Portree Hospital. NHS Highland has pursued a number of successful recruitment initiatives in partnership with the local community. They have looked at meeting accommodation needs for clinical staff and developing training opportunities. I am pleased to say that this has led to successful appointments to all advanced practitioner vacancies in Skye. All the new permanent staff will be in place by the end of this year. In addition to this, a new team lead for urgent care took up post on the 8th of September, a crucial appointment to help support the expertise and resilience of the service. His role will span urgent care on the hospital sites at both Portree and Broadford to ensure a seamless service and to develop the integrated model NHS Highland are aiming to achieve. NHS Highland is continuing to build on the resilience of the service by investing in staff training and development. This is to ensure that the highest level of clinical expertise is available to Skye patients 24/7. Paramedics, ward nurses, advanced nurse practitioners are working together as a multidisciplinary team across the hospital to share knowledge and skills and optimise the quality of care that they can give. Presiding Officer, when I visited Skye, I stressed the importance of effective communication with the public about how to access urgent care. This is essential to build trust and confidence in the resilience and availability of the service. We know that NHS 24 plays a vital role in responding to patients as a first point of contact, and their staff are trained to direct patients to the right help. NHS Highland continue to work in tandem with NHS 24 and the Scottish Ambulance Service to ensure that patients in Skye know how to access the healthcare they need when they need it. In collaboration with NHS Highland, NHS 24 and the Scottish Ambulance Service undertook a leaflet drop to approximately 6,000 households in Skye in August to highlight the urgent care services on offer and how to access them. NHS Highland will continue to monitor the effectiveness of such campaigns and will work together with local community representatives to ensure that a consistent communication plan about their services is agreed and taken forward. Now, the Chamber, Presiding Officer, you in particular, will know that I myself grew up in Orkney. And I know all too well that living and working in rural and island communities brings with it challenges. In Skye in particular, there are concerns about the availability of affordable housing, one of the original recommendations in Sir Lewis's review. This is why the Scottish Government is making up to £25 million available to local authorities and registered social landlords to enable them to acquire suitable homes to support the needs of key workers where required. Beyond this, the Scottish Government has established a number of other initiatives to support rural and island healthcare, including committing over £3 million to progress the National Centre for Remote and Rural Health and Care, which launched in October 2023. The Centre is working with health boards and health and social care partnerships to ensure we avoid a one-size-fits-all approach. The Remote, Rural and Island Task and Finish Group has also established to develop a sustainable model for delivery of healthcare for these communities and reflects the unique needs of these areas. This includes better use of digital tools, mobile services and local workforce solutions. This work is helping to shape a tiered framework for healthcare delivery, ensuring that care is provided as close to home as possible, whilst also improving access to specialist services when needed. Board Chief Executives will be discussing this work in October, and a programme of rural and island-specific training sessions is also in development, with 2 pieces of work already progressing focused on dispensing practices and developing supervisory training hubs. Presiding Officer, I understand the concerns shared by local communities and people in Skye. I appreciate it has been 7 years since Sir Lewis Ritchie's report, but it is right that NHS Highland have been given the time and the space to rebuild their workforce and to address the wider barriers that stand in the way of delivering sustainable healthcare. However, I am also clear that we must see continued improvement. Any future decisions taken on the provision of service must be based on the right clinical evidence and take into consideration the impact on local accessibility and, importantly, equity. It's my pledge that the Scottish Government will do all it can to assist NHS Highland and to ensure the voices of all the people of Skye are well represented in decisions taken. Indeed, That is a wider pledge to all rural and island communities in Scotland. As an islander myself, I understand the challenges felt, and please be assured this is a government that will continue to listen and learn from you. Thank you.
Thank you. The Cabinet Secretary will take questions on the issues raised in his statement and intend to allow around 20 minutes, after which we'll need to move on to the next item of business. And I would encourage members wishing to ask a question to make sure they've pressed the request to speak buttons. I call first Jamie Halcrow-Johnson.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. I thank the Cabinet Secretary for advance sight of his statement. But it's a statement that shouldn't have had to be made last year, when apologising to Ailey Beaton for the frightening experience she had to endure. John Swinney said it should never have been allowed to happen, that it was a matter of deep concern to the government that Sir Lewis Ritchie's recommendations had not been delivered, and that Neil Gray had told NHS Highland last year that it must happen at the earliest possible opportunity. But here we are again, because it didn't happen. There was a short period of improved service, but people were still turned or directed away from Portree Hospital before NHS Highland finally admitted to SOS NHS Skye campaigners in June this year that their model was not working. We must all recognise that the people of North Skye have been very badly served. Time and time again, the Government and NHS Highland have not delivered what they promised: a sustainable 24-hour urgent care service at Portree, accessible to local people. In his statement today, Neil Gray, as the Scottish Government has repeatedly done, largely passes the buck to NHS Highland. But will Neil Gray accept there is nothing in his statement that outlines action the Scottish Government is taking specifically to improve the situation in the north of Skye? And if he does think that what he's announced today will work, that it will restore that long-term, sustainable 24/7 urgent care at Portree Hospital, when will that be by? Presiding Officer, local people don't want just more empty promises. They want a proper, sustainable plan to deliver 24/7 urgent care at Portree, and they want a long-term vision for their hospital. Neil Gray has today said that things will improve. He said the same thing to campaigners last month, and their response, and I quote, was, "That's what NHS Highland said 7 years ago, and every year since."
Cabinet Secretary. Cabinet Secretary.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. So I did have the opportunity to meet with campaigners, and I heard very clearly their concerns. I can also understand their frustration. I set out where those frustrations come from in my statement. I readily understand that as an islander, like Mr Halcrow-Johnson is. I readily understand that perspective. But there are a number of inaccuracies that I need to correct about Jamie Halcrow-Johnson's question. The first is that NHS Highland have not said that the model is not working. They've said that it's challenging. That is different. He also suggested that accessible 24-hour urgent care is not available. That's not true. It is available. It's currently available. I was able to see how that is working. In terms of the Scottish Government's interventions, I've already set out in my statement the work that we are doing to support NHS Highland, and that has allowed NHS Highland to move forward with the recruitment work, with the model of change that came about in August. So my commitment as the Cabinet Secretary, in collaboration with NHS Highland to the people of Skye, is that the investments that are being made, the additional recruitment that's been made, will offer that 24/7 out-of-hour service on a sustainable basis.
Rhoda Grant.
Thank you. These statements have already been made, yet nothing changes, and there's no new action outlined in this statement today that gives confidence that there will be any change. The Cabinet Secretary himself admits that 7 years is already far too long to wait, and yet it'll be at least 8 years before these changes he's talking about materialise. That's if they materialise. These posts have been filled before, only to have applicants pull out because they can't find a home in Skye. The Key Workers Fund has been available for 3 years, yet it hasn't been used in Portree and only has 2 years left to run. So can I ask, what has changed that will make these promises a reality? When will the people of North Skye have the health service that they can rely on, or is this just another pre-election promise with no hope of delivery?
Secretary.
The reason that I'm here setting out this statement is there was a request from parties in the Bureau for there to be a statement providing an update. The real fundamental change happened last summer when the model that was deployed by NHS Highland was updated off the back of the tragic incidents that took place in Skye last summer. The support that the Government has provided NHS Highland to make the recruitment that is necessary, both in terms of advanced nurse practitioners, to support the training that is taking place for all staff on the Portree site, and to ensure that the coordination that's been delivered by the new Director for Urgent Care Services is what will help to ensure that that sustainable service that Rhoda Grant rightly asked for can be maintained.
Emma Roddick, to be followed by Edward Mountain.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The implementation of Ritchie recommendations is badly needed, and I'm glad to hear of progress, although I recognise that the time between now and their publication in 2018 has meant a loss of trust and continued frustration about services. Recruitment and retention of staff will be critical to ensuring that future work is successful. So can the Cabinet Secretary speak to how this will be prioritised and what the key barriers are to securing a full workforce?
Cabinet Secretary.
I thank Emma Roddick for that question. I absolutely understand and reflected on that in my statement on the frustrations and the time that has taken to get to this point. She's absolutely right around recruitment. The recruitment processes are underway, and we expect the full staff complement to be in place by the end of this year. What is not helping us in terms of recruitment is, I've already set out, the housing situation that we are investing in supporting around communities in Skye and other parts of rural and island Scotland, but also the very restrictive migration situation that has been perpetrated by the Labour UK Government, where we've seen a 77% reduction in the number of health and care visas being offered over the last year.
Edward Mountain, to be followed by Rona Mackay.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. And I welcome the Lewis Ritchie report in 2018, and I was delighted to play a part in actually some of the recommendations. One of the recommendations was that a fast response vehicle and a paramedic would be based in Portree Hospital. I think the fast response vehicle cost £100,000. In 2024, the fast response vehicle was seen heading towards Fort William. My question is to the Cabinet Secretary, is it back? Is it now manned? And will it be replaced in 2025 when its life is determined to be up?
Cabinet Secretary.
So I heard about the situation with regards to the rapid response vehicle when I was meeting with campaigners, and I also heard about the positioning of the ambulance service at Portree and how the ambulance service staff are helping as a multidisciplinary team to ensure the provision of safe and sustainable services can be delivered on a continuing basis at Portree. I'm grateful to Edward Mountain for his collaboration in Sir Lewis Ritchie's report, and I'd be happy to write to him with more detail on the questions that he's put, further questions he's put.
Rona Mackay, to be followed by Paul Sweeney.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I'm proud that this Scottish Government 2025 to 26 budget, which Labour and the Tories didn't vote for, provides increased investment of £133 million from 2024 to 25 for NHS Highland. Can the Cabinet Secretary advise how this additional funding has been and will continue to be used to support our island communities, such as the Isle of Skye?
Cabinet Secretary.
Thank you, President Officer. In 2025-26, all boards received increased investment in their baseline funding, with NHS Highland receiving over £940 million. As has been set out, this represented increased investment of £133 million from 2024-25, including additional funding to provide for prior pay deals, as well as a range of funding to support vital frontline services. NHS Highland's funding for 2025-26 will support delivery of commitments such as delivering direct access to front-door frailty services at their acute site, improving community capacity, fully delivering 2025-26 discharge without delay programme principles in all inpatient sites, ensuring timely discharge planning and the full use of multidisciplinary teams, and the expansion of hospital-at-home services.
Paul Sweeney, to be followed by Claire Hawkey.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. Thank the Cabinet Secretary for a statement. The Health Committee did have the opportunity to visit Skye last May 2024, which was a really insightful visit, certainly for me as a rather parochial Glaswegian. It was my first visit to the island, and the insights from the staff at Portree and at Broadford were really instructive. And there were some really helpful suggestions that were made. One that always stuck out to me was the abandoned old Broadford hospital buildings that were boarded up that could have been readily converted into accommodation for visiting clinicians, or even more permanent accommodation for people looking to develop careers on the island. That was a real pressure. The housing pressure was still something that seems a structural challenge. So whilst it's welcome that the practitioner vacancies have been filled, that longer-term need to preserve career pathways on the island is important. Also, the key point, if I may, Deputy, really key point was the CT scanner at Broadford that doesn't exist. It was an obvious way to reduce the ambulance transfers to Ravenmore. Could that be
Cabinet Secretary. Cabinet Secretary.
Matters that Mr Sweeney has raised are being looked at. The situation with regards to the former Broadford site, I understand, has been looked at and progressed, and that's part of the investments that are being made by government to give opportunity for rural and island communities across Scotland to look to take forward innovative ways of providing key worker housing and support to ensure that we can continue to have sustainable island and rural communities.
Claire Hawkey, to be followed by Ariane Burgess.
Anna Mine Chamber. I'm employed as a bank nurse by Greater Glasgow and Clyde NHS. The Hospital at Home service in Scotland has been welcomed by patients receiving hospital-level care in their own homes, and I'm pleased the Scottish Government has committed to expanding this. It's arguably most valuable in rural and island communities where healthcare facilities might be far away. Can the Cabinet Secretary therefore set out how patients in these communities are already benefiting and what more we can expect as the service grows?
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, Claire Hawkey is absolutely right about the appreciation that there is amongst patients, but also staff, for the hospital at home expansion, and which has been supported this year by a share of £100 million as part of the 2025-26 budget to reduce waiting times and delayed discharges, shifting the balance of care from acute to community. This funding is to support boards with additional upfront costs associated with the setting up of services, and work is well underway to increase hospital at home provision to 2,000 beds by the end of 2026, making it Scotland's biggest hospital, meaning more people can receive hospital-level care in their own homes. I've also commissioned Healthcare Improvement Scotland to support integration authorities to adapt hospital at home to rural and island communities, and the social impact of hospital at home in rural and island communities can be even greater than a typical urban service, as it enables people to stay at their home and in their own community and avoid being transported out with their community, away from family and friends.
Ariane Burgess, to be followed by Alex Cole-Hamilton.
While out-of-hours hospital care is vital, most healthcare on Skye is delivered in the community. With GP recruitment and retention across the Highlands in a fragile state, will the Government take action to prevent community services from following the same path as Portree Hospital by committing to a whole-systems approach that supports rural workforce retention, improves access to training and career progression, and ensures sustainable primary care for rural communities?
Cabinet Secretary.
The thing to say is that I'm confident in the services being provided at Portree Hospital, but we are in discussion with the BMA and the Royal College of GPs currently around their future funding models and ensuring that a sustainable general practice model comes forward, which includes the additional recruitment of general practitioners in order to improve access. We have taken steps, as I've set out in my statement, around rural and island medical provision to ensure that we have foresight on the issues that are being required in rural and island communities, and I've taken a number of steps, including around ScotGem, to recruit more into rural and island communities.
Alex Cole-Hamilton, to be followed by Karen Adam.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Colleagues will remember that I raised this at First Minister's Questions when there was very nearly a tragic incident on the doorstep of Portree Hospital last year. And the Cabinet Secretary says that most of the recommendations of the independent review have been met, yet people on Skye still face the potential of locked doors at Portree Hospital in moments of crisis, and some will still be forced into 2-hour round trips to Broadford. Given the tragic incidents of last year and continued confusion around urgent care, when will people in the north end of Skye be able to walk into Portree Hospital and have confidence that qualified staff are there to treat them without them first having to phone NHS 24?
Cabinet Secretary.
Mr Cole-Hamilton, I'm sure, will recognise that urgent care services tend not to be drop-in services. However, he should be aware that following the situation last summer, there is now an intercom service at the door of the hospital, that patients will not be turned away, but for the normal security of staff, as is evidenced elsewhere, it is the right process for patients to be contacting NHS 24 in the first instance to ensure that their needs are best met through NHS 24 and directed to the best services. That is what is in place in every other part of the country. I recognise the concerns that were raised with me about NHS 24 and their knowledge of the local system. I reflected back to them my experience as an islander, and I recognise and understand that. That's why we've been working with NHS Highland, with NHS 24, to ensure that that out-of-hours approach, that is an urgent care approach, which is in place for every other part of the community, is well served in Skye as well.
Karen Adam, to be followed by Brian Whittle.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The Cabinet Secretary referenced the National Centre for Remote and Rural Health and Care, which was created to help reduce health inequalities and improve the delivery of healthcare services in rural communities. Can the Cabinet Secretary please provide an update on the work being carried out by the Centre and how this will continue to be supported beyond the end of Phase 1 this month?
Cabinet Secretary.
Thank you, President Officer. The National Centre was established in 2023 and has 4 priorities: supporting and developing our rural and island healthcare workforce, building sustainable health and care services, sharing rural primary care knowledge and data, and reducing rural health inequalities. Work completed so far includes a training network for rural primary care practices, funding for 5 paramedics to undertake the Rural Advanced Practice MSc, specific training for dispensing practices, and a practitioner-led research award scheme. Funding is in place until April 2026, and NHS Education for Scotland are working closely with officials to establish the plan for the next phase of the centre.
Brian Whittle, to be followed by Emma Harper.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. I think basic health care should be the same no matter where the locality. Emergency care, like those needed for accident emergency, those needed for stroke and heart attacks, and maternity care are all required with a level of urgency. And I wonder, does the Minister recognise that as long as health boards are forced to centralise services to balance budgets, rural communities like those in NHS Highland and Islands will keep seeing local health care pulled away from them, degrading care and putting lives at risk?
Cabinet Secretary.
In terms of what we're speaking about today, I know Mr Whittle won't have wanted to do this, but there is a conflation there around what is urgent care and what is emergency care. And what we're talking about here is urgent care, and particularly in the out-of-hours period, and that accessibility at Portree, which has been maintained. In terms of emergency care, there's very clear pathways in place to support the communities in Skye, and that's ongoing.
And Emma Harper.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I remind Chamber that prior to coming here, I was a clinical nurse educator in rural NHS offices in Galloway. And we know that in rural and island communities, multidisciplinary teams can play a pivotal role in bridging gaps in care. And the Cabinet Secretary mentioned that. Can the Cabinet Secretary provide any further information on the Government's work to support implementation of these teams?
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, Emma Harper is absolutely right, and we are committed to the development of multidisciplinary teams to help ensure people receive the right care at the right time in general practice and in the community. We're investing over £190 million in the Primary Care Improvement Fund this year, and we're making strong progress in expanding the multidisciplinary team workforce. There were over 5,000 whole-time equivalent staff in post as of March this year, supporting services including physiotherapy, pharmacotherapy, phlebotomy, an increase of over 170 whole-time equivalents since last year. Around 3,500 whole-time equivalents were funded directly by our Primary Care Improvement Fund, and what I was able to witness in the summer tours was an incredible flexibility in our rural workforce in ensuring that continuation and continuity of care for people in primary and urgent care services.
Thank you, Cabinet Secretary. That concludes this item of business. There will be a brief pause before we move to the next item to allow front benches to change.